And we're live. Welcome back, everybody, to our seminar series, Digital Twins for Cities, hosted by Chalmers University and the Digital Twin City Center. My name is Bernd Ketzler. I'm the center coordinator and the host of this series. And we had a very successful session last week. Now we continue with our second session. As always, the session will be available on YouTube afterwards, and you're very encouraged to ask questions in the YouTube chat. This time, I can really lean back and enjoy the show because I have some support here. Lina, my colleague, is here to help me out and to moderate this session. Welcome, Lina.
Thank you, Bernd.
Great to have you. Lina, you're the marketing director at Ramboll, but you also chair the board of directors at the Digital Twin City Center. And without any further ado, I would like to give you the stage, and I will lean back and enjoy the show. Have a good one.
Thank you, Bernd, and hi, everyone. Today, our focus will be on a highly interesting topic, business and revenue models, a topic I find especially interesting and important to discuss, as I believe that this is one of the keys that we need to find to be able to unlock the potential with digital twins. What value can digital twins create for different stakeholders? Who should be willing to take the investments? And also, which models do we already see trying to monetize that value? So with me today, I'm very glad to be able to present three very prominent speakers. We have Ken Dooley, Chief Strategy Officer, Empathic Buildings at Holtian, Raphael Sachs, Associate Professor of Construction Management, Technion Israel Institute of Technology, and also Nicolas Verne, CEO and founder of Winio. The format today for this session will be that each speaker has about 10 minutes to give their reflections and observation on this topic, and then I will invite everyone back on stage and we will have a panel discussion. And I expect that to be really vibrant and a discussion full of energy. So with that said, I think we are ready to invite our first speaker on stage today. So welcome, Nicolas Verne.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Nicolas.
Hey, how are things going?
Very glad to have you here today. You are a true digital twin evangelist, and I believe a thought leader for everything that has with smart buildings and smart cities to do, and also now founder and CEO of Winio. So it will be very interesting to listen to your reflections and observations on this topic, Nicolas. The stage is yours.
Perfect. Thank you. Great to be here. And yes, I am trying to at least to do all these kind of things. And today the topic is business and revenue models. And I'm approaching it from the perspective if it is actually a tech challenge or a sales challenge. So just a quick background about me. My name is Nicolas Verne, a strategy innovation expert at Winio. I've been working with strategy innovation for the last 10 years, focusing more on the management side and how to do business on a global landscape, then in IT management, and then narrowed it down to smart buildings the last 6 years. And then a couple of years ago, I sort of was interested in more the construction space because I saw that a lot of the problems that were inherited in the smart building space actually came from construction, no blame on them. But that was pretty interesting. And that also led me to the concept of digital twins. So I've been working on that for 2 years. So it's European digital twins, national, energy, construction, manufacturing, healthcare, a lot of different things. And I'm getting a lot of inspiration from my podcast, where I interview world leaders about these kind of things, 3D printing, real estate, and basically everything, from like known to Earth, and also in space, actually. So without further ado, some further ado, some of the things that I've been doing, again, like trying to help predict the future for building automation and all these kind of things. And this slide that is hidden behind here, it just shows that all the technology, that exists today, that's what, the new companies are, starting with, hopefully at least. They're not going, 20 years back and using legacy solutions to start innovating with. And I think that's really important when you're looking at these kind of things. And also, this is just a slide for interoperable lifecycle digital twins for manufacturing. And as you can see, it's extremely dense. well, not dense as in stupid, but a lot of information packed into one, which might be a little bit stupid, to be honest. But this is just like beginning of a white paper, and it just shows that the interoperability and the life cycle perspective of digital twins is extremely important to capture knowledge here from both systems and people, and take that forever. So just what a digital twin is, I mean, I think that if you ask, digital twin experts, both us three here in this seminar, what a digital twin is, you're going to get a lot of different answers. So I just took this one from Digital Twin Consortium, where a digital twin is a virtual representation of real-world entities and processes synchronized at a specific frequency and fidelity. Basically, yeah, like a digital twin. And what that means from a smart society perspective is that, the capabilities that we talked about last week from, I think, Adam from Australia, what are the capabilities with digital twins? So you can bridge knowledge gaps, put everyone in the same room, virtual reality or not. The whole point is to bring, people together and system together into like a contextual entity. When you have past, present data, and then you see these things working together, you can also predict the future. Allowing some capabilities of digital twins working with ontologies has the ability to shorten down the speed or fasten, accelerate the speed to value creation with working with AI. And again, like the visual collaboration, not only from a virtual reality but also an augmented reality perspective, is extremely important when it comes to the capabilities. Holistic data layer, especially human-machine interaction, where it's not only about technology or machines, but also what a digital twin can do for people. And especially, I think, like define the world and then helping us innovate with the world as it looks like today. So on the topic of can we compare these business models, I think that's sort of one of the cues that I got from Bernd here as an organizer. I mean, looking at the global landscape, what is happening in China with their 150 smart cities, AI, 5G, blockchain-enabled societies, have this data fabric in the whole scheme of things. What can we learn from them? Can we take that to Sweden, into the Nordics? Can we take what is going on in the US? What is happening in that space? Sorry. There. What is happening in that space, and just take that to Sweden, or for instance, for whatever region that we're talking about. And I think yes and no. I think we can look at those things for inspiration, and like what kind of business model they have, what kind of go-to-market they had, and try to attack that in the perspective that companies are working at. But I mean, like one of the things with digital twins is the top three questions are like, what is it? And I try to explain a little bit about that. Why should I care? And I'm sort of getting to that point a little bit. But then again, like, how do I get started? How do companies get started with digital twins? And I think one of the the mistakes that companies are making, both on the customer side as well as the supplier side, is to focus on the technology. These kind of questions, ontology based, real time capabilities, all these kind of things. And I think that is wrong because of these core assumptions. Basically, people don't necessarily want to change. Organizations don't want to change. Well, that means that organizations don't want to change, and they make decisions how they've always made decisions. I mean, the sales cycles for existing companies, large ones at least, as well as public entities, I mean, they can be anything from a week to months to years, to be honest. So understanding that and meeting the customers with how they're making decisions today, I think that's super important. So I'm a little bit sorry if this is not a super sexy presentation about like all the cool business models and revenue models that exist in the world, because I think that the most important thing is to again like cater to how people make decisions today. So this like increased ROI means higher and faster ROI. So when we say this in the relation to real estate, it's basically return on investment, of course, and net operating income. But ROI is also, rate of innovation. So when you look historically at real estate, that hasn't, they haven't really had a high rate of innovation, whether that is in construction or buildings and all these kind of things. But I think I know that now with COVID, and especially in the US and elsewhere, where there hasn't been that many people in buildings, there is a sense of urgency to bring people back to buildings. And when you have these legacy solutions to traditional buildings, you want them to change faster. So then, return on investment is tightly coupled with rate of innovation, where, future ready facilities is extremely important to be able to cater to the unknown. So I think like the 330-300 rule is important, understanding, the context of real estate. So basically like $3 per square feet is what you spend on energy costs. $30 per square feet is what you spend on maintenance, upkeep, and these kind of things. But $300 is what you spend on well-being and productivity. And I think that's like one of the most elusive goals. And I think that that's sort of what a lot of companies are after. And that's not necessarily right or wrong, because real estate and all these industries are super complex. There are different stakeholders. So again, understanding what the situation is for whatever customer that companies are talking to or catering to is of utmost importance in my mind. So just going to leave everyone with something tangible, hopefully to sort of like deal with the intangible stuff that is out there today. So basically, spin selling is one of the tools that I'm using quite a lot, and also helping scale ups and startups getting to market with digital twins, and not talking so much about technology, but actually starting with the situation. So by asking comes to, what is the situation that you're in, what are the problems that you want to solve, what is the sense of urgency, all these kind of things, and then leading to understanding the situation, and then figuring out, okay, what are the challenges that you have, honing down on the actual problems that they have, and then trying to drag them down as much as possible into the mud, to be honest, so to let them feel that what they're doing today, what kind of problems that they have, they can't do this anymore. Understanding what the implications are for them as a business in reaching their goals or daily operations, whatever that is. So once you've done that, once you have them there, they feel that their life is miserable, everything that they're doing, that's when you say, what would be the perfect solution for you? That's how and you also have to know about the capabilities of digital twins or whatever solution that you're working with as well. So I think like that's when you say, okay, what would be the perfect solution for you to do these kind of things, and just map this out. And then you can have like a really clear, as is situation with the to be, and also, dare to ask these kind of questions about the revenue models and the business models. How do you acquire these, tools today? Who am I supposed to talk to? Who are the stakeholders that need to be in this decision-making process? And I think that's just like the short and sweet, maybe not so sweet and maybe not so short, but it's an attempt at least to showcase, the business models and the revenue models that has to exist with digital twins, because it is sort of a hype cycle technology. And a lot of companies are, selling digital twins. I myself call myself a digital twin evangelist. But I think it's important to look outside, to take inspiration from others, but then match that as quickly as possible with the customer's context or whatever the problem that you're trying to solve. Go where the speed is if you want to get stuff done, and then ask as many questions as possible. I've seen so many things, they're trying to explain the technology, trying to explain everything that the digital twin can do, what it can't do, and, how the digital twin technology is better than the other ones, and why it's better than BI tools, or all these kind of things. But it takes too much time, and, it's maybe like 1%, if that actually care. People just want to solve their problems, and, they're not necessarily want to change. So I think like define the as is, and then, bring the people, whatever that is, to what an amazing world it is, enabled by digital twins. And if you need any help with that, of course, just reach out. So I think that is more about the tangible aspects, about not selling digital twins per se, but actually matching that to how customers and companies are, making these decisions today. Get in with existing budgets instead of waiting for new innovation budgets, and like getting stuck in the proof of concept stage. And just one final thing here, I don't know how much I'm with time here, but one final thing is, proof of concepts are never about the technology. They're always about the organizational fit, and to understand how, again, like the companies, the customers will make decisions about this topic. And that's it. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Nicholas, for a very interesting presentation. And we will go back to you again soon for the panel discussion, but maybe one question already now.
Sure.
You are working as advisor and consulting across industries on this topic today. What do you think we really should bring with us from the front runners here? If we look at the more mature industries like aviation or automotive, if it's only one or two things you should mention, what do you think we should learn?
Well, I'm going to do with two things. So one thing, both like in aviation, I mean, again, like pharma or automotive, they're not that advanced. I think like the future might be here, but it's very unevenly distributed. So I think like maybe Tesla in terms of automotive, they're, somewhat there. So that leads to like the second part of this. So I don't think we're going to sort of say that a lot of other industries are, there, because I know for a fact that they're not, unfortunately, or good or bad, whatever that is. But what I think that we should strive for is definitely, I can recommend a book called Compete in the Age of AI, which is phenomenal. And they talk about having a digital business model and digital operating model. So just to give like a sort of quick example of what this means is that Ant Financial, there's like a banking group supposedly done, they were tried to do an IPO in the US, I think it was a couple of months ago. It failed for some different reasons, but they have 11,000 people and they're servicing 715 million people with 11,000 people. If you look at traditional companies like Bank of America, they have 210,000 people servicing 70 million. So it's completely reversed. And I think that can only happen when you have a digital business model and a digital operating model. So I don't think it's so much of an industry problem or like looking at other industries, but actually looking at organizations that have achieved this level of digital maturity, working with digital business models and digital operating models.
Thanks a lot. I will get back to you a little bit later.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Thank you. So now it's time for our next speaker. I welcome Ken Dooley on stage.
Hi, Lena.
Hi, very glad to have you.
Thank you. I'm just going to get my screen set up. Yeah, super.
Yeah, you are Chief Strategy Officer of Empathic Building at Holtian, and you're also the researcher and author behind a recently published study, Building Digital Twins.
Yes, I am indeed.
Yeah, I know that you're going to share some highlights from that for us today, but before you do that, I'm very keen on, can you just say a few words about your motivation behind doing that research and writing that report?
Yeah, so Granlund, the company I used to work for, I left in December, and I wrote the report as a member of their staff. I was a technology director in the innovation side. They have a big design and construction design. 70% of their business is maybe design. And I was working on the operation side, so on energy efficiency and on kind of wellness in buildings and more the operations thing. And I was a technology director for the operations phase. And we had a really good guy in our team who was a technology director for the construction design phase. And I was consistently saying to him, hey, when is this BIM to FM thing going to be ready? We've been waiting for a long time. And with a little bit of time at the start of lockdown, let's say last April, I decided to have a look at it through really fresh eyes and through the kind of lens of lean innovation. And that kind of potential fresh look at it is the result. The report is the result of that.
Feel free. It will be very interesting to listen to your highlights.
Super. Okay, great. I'm going to set my timer, and then please tell me if you cannot see my screen. I really hope you can. Great. So I'm going to talk about simple digital twins. And as Lena said, I'm now working with Holtian and a service called Empathic Building. And I'm also a postdoctoral researcher in Aalto University working on smart buildings. And this really plays into the kind of history I've had in my career with regards to energy and real estate and kind of sustainability. And for the last couple of years, I've really been working on kind of lean experiments and services and business model design around machine learning or data or IoT or these other things. As Lena said, we produced a report last December. I think Bernd is going to put a link. This is what the report looks like. I like to show a kind of feeling of what the report looks like because we wrote it to be really accessible. We didn't write it for technology people or industry insiders. We wrote it for the whole kind of group of stakeholders, and it should be approachable and kind of easy to read. That was written with Jose Campuzano last December. And then the real intent, as I said, was to kind of look at the kind of legacy behind buildings and to kind of see what works and what doesn't work. Some of the things that I'd like to just raise really quickly are, we do need a user interface for lots of different stakeholders. We do need to accept that there are continuous alterations in buildings and that the models or floor plans or PDFs are more than likely out of date for a building that's a year or two old even. And as Nicholas said, there's a real focus on end users as well. This idea of each meter squared of a building for a knowledge organization being $300 for the cost of that company is $300 for staff and 30 on rent and 3 on energy, really puts in focus how important the end user is. That's a fact I use as well. And we really wanted to look at real world problems. So a real service design, lean innovation approach. We interviewed owners and investors, renovation teams and construction companies, architects. We interviewed asset managers, facility managers, other service providers like cleaning companies or security companies, technology vendors who might be a lighting company who want to see where their lights are on a floor plan or something like that. And then kind of occupants and, customers of, let's say, other types of buildings. And one key thing we have to remember is that big technology enablers like digital twins, like data platforms, they're super, super complex, but they're almost worth how complicated they are because they solve so many problems. They're big enablers. So the complexity is worth it because they solve loads of problems, but there's a line where complexity becomes problematic. So what we did in the report was we categorized based on the kind of solutions that would solve people's problems. We categorized 4 different types of digital twins based on complexity. We have a full as-built digital twin, maybe BIM model from a construction project with some data integrated in it. We have a kind of simulation, a more energy-based operations facility management-based digital twin that maybe you have simulations on or predictive maintenance. You have a kind of a light kind of end user, let's say in an office building, we call this kind of an interactive floor plan, digital twin. And then some of the investors really just wanted something really high level, which was really to just track lease management and costs. That was basically something better than Excel. So it was numbers connected to a really simple kind of floor plan where when I clicked some numbers for a unit, the unit highlighted or something like this. And the company I now work for, Empathic Building, really are on this low complexity stage and really can solve these kind of problems that are a light digital twin elements. So Empathic Building, then, this is one of our digital twins. It's a hospital in Norway. These twins are really light. They're built on DWGs. And our kind of value proposition is that our digital twins really, really focus on end user experience. And then the data built to really solve the end user problems, we then can manage for operational excellence. This is again, go back to Nicholas's point about the 333, or I like to say 90-10-1 or 99-1. In a knowledge organization, if you have an office building, 90% of your costs are staff. So, solve those problems first. And I like to show a video as well of Empathic Building to show just how intuitive and how easy it is to use. It was built by games designers and software developers. It wasn't built by anyone from the real estate and construction industry. You can use it to kind of find people, find spaces, save time, make service ticket requests, give feedback. There's a search box to search for people, search for meeting rooms. There's indoor navigation in there. And it's a really easy to use light tool. It's a web app. So you can send it to someone in an email. They can open a link on their laptop. You can send it a text message and they can open it on their phone. It can be opened on touch screens to play with it in the foyer of an office building or on the entrance to a floor. So you don't have to worry about people not downloading the app or updating the app or native compatibility for different phones. So one thing we talk about in the report is just balancing the value created and the complexity of a digital twin. I think simple digital twins are in this bottom quarter successful initial product. I think that BIM-based digital twins today are in this low value, high complexity, unsuccessful product category. One thing we did in the report, and one thing we used to talk about a lot, is the top of the mountain. How are we ever going to get to the perfect digital twin? And for us, there was 2 approaches. There was this kind of iterative approach where we start with different complexities and build up over time, or there was the long-term approach, which is taking the cable car straight to the top of the mountain, which I used to say it wasn't the iterative approach, it wasn't the service design approach. It was we take a number of people, we lock them in a room for 2 or 3 years or 5 or 10 years, and we come up with this amazing, hugely complex digital twin. I presented this last September to Granlund's customers who were, designers, construction companies, architects, building owners, kind of maintenance companies, so really heavy real estate and construction people. And of the 450 people at the event, 180 people voted, and 87% of those people said, take the iterative approach. Let's not wait for this big solution that solves all of the possible problems. Please start off with simple version and then continuously develop that. And that was a big result for and a real kind of good advocacy for what we found in the report. So in the report, we have different business cases from all the different companies that we've interviewed. We have the complex digital twins and the kind of building services digital twins, which are the kind of simulation predictive maintenance twins. We have business cases for the interactive floor plans like empathic building, business cases for the dashboards, the kind of business intelligence dashboards. And these are all kind of companies saying, this is the problems we think you can solve with this particular piece of technology. And then, I think there's a point when it's kind of 2D and we really extrapolate 2D or simple to 3D, where we really extrapolate or extract as much value as possible out of it. And then to really go to a BIM level of information, I think there's a jump in complexity, which then says, okay, it really needs to do more. And the thing that I'm really interested in the light or simple digital twins is to really solve these low and medium value use cases or business cases today and in the next year or two, rather than really wait for real-time energy simulations or due diligence reports being pulled out of digital twins or predictive maintenance, the building telling us what's wrong with it. So we've really collected these low to medium value use cases, such as a UI for interior designers that they can guarantee is actually an up-to-date floor plan when they start their design, or it's all kinds of things here around, maybe it's marketing material for renting it, or using it to add inspections, or all kinds of kind of different medium to low value, not really changing the world, but lots of customers would love to have a really light digital twin, which really means guarantee to me that the model, 2D, 3D, floor plan, whatever it is, guarantee to me that it's up to date. And then all of these people can take advantage of having an up-to-date floor plan and then embed it with some real-time information. And I'm as simple as that on my digital twin definition. And we really see empathic building as solving these problems. So we, in the simple digital twin world, are on a kind of a disruptive trajectory. It's really important to point out that, BIM comes in so complicated and so heavy on day one of the operational life cycle that it's really coming in there. And with a disruptive mindset, you say, do we really need everything that's in it? And in the report, we talk about the revenue model as well. It's probably the idea that the building owner should pay. There's an extra cost to having a really good as-built digital twin. We then need to embed some data and maybe integrate the building management system data with it. And there's all these other elements that need to happen. So I think one element of the business model, and this is probably my last slide, is just to say, if the building owner is going to kind of get from it, is going to pay for it, what do they get? So, are the cleaning companies or the maintenance companies actually going to have cheaper services because there's a digital twin in the building? What is the kind of the long-term balance and the business model? And I think the last thing to say then is, I think the business cases such as, simulations or predictive maintenance, they need development. The technology from converting BIM to a digital twin needs development, and the business model as well. And that's why we think simple digital twins are so kind of important for now. And if you listen to Gartner, for the next maybe 3 to 5 years before the complex digital twins really are mature enough and are ready for production.
Thanks a lot for a super relevant presentation, Ken.
Cool, thanks.
What I find extremely interesting in your research and in this publication is that it's one of the first that I really have seen trying to explore the market side, the demand side of this. And from experience, also representing the engineering and construction industry here today, it's so easy to end up approaching this from the technology side. What would you say that we should bring with us? We have been in a long journey already with BIM. What should we bring with us for lessons and learnings now enter more into the digital twin era?
Yeah, I think try and find out when we're being emotional, when we have an emotional attachment to something. We have an emotional attachment to BIM because there's we've built it and we think it's great. And but we need to kind of step back and have a rational eye and say, what is this slowing us down? And there's a kind of a mythical element to digital twins. We've had so many analogies over the year. Is a digital twin a Ferrari when only we want a bicycle? And lately we've been saying, or someone said, is a digital twin a hoverboard from Back to the Future? That someone promised us this thing for 30 years ago in a movie, and we're waiting for it. No matter what transport solutions you deliver in the meantime, we'll turn our noses up on it because we're waiting for a hoverboard. And we need to step back from the emotional attachment and the dream and the fantasy of these digital twins and the black box data platform, IoT platform. And it's okay to say we would love to have one. And it's okay to have a certain proportion of the industry making that dream happen. But we need to step back and think when everyone in the industry is making that dream happen and we're still waiting for it 10 years later, someone needs to step back and kind of go, there might be a different avenue. Especially, the language or the processes with the startup world and lean innovation for the last 4 or 5 years have really given us the tools to think that way and to go out to customers and to ask them what value different levels would bring. And then there's a sweet spot there which says, once I turn this corner, the value gets better, but the complexity gets really complicated. Let's start here and let's deliver some element of this.
Thanks a lot. I will invite you back for the panel discussion later.
Super, thanks.
Yeah. And speaking about BIM, I think that is also a good transition or introduction to our next speaker. So welcome on stage, Raphael Sachs.
Well, thank you very much, Nina, and thank you to the previous two speakers.
Yeah. Thanks for being here. You are Associate Professor of Construction Management, Technion Israel Institute of Technology, and you have also done a lot of research on the synergies between BIM and lean construction, and also regarding adoption of innovative technologies in the construction sector, such as digital twins. So it will be very interesting to listen to your reflections and observations on this topic, Raphael. The stage is yours.
Well, thank you very much, Nina. And perhaps as an opening, I would say that I have the luxury of being an academic, and that means that we can take the long view, unlike Ken's approach. We're not necessarily pressured by the need to come up with the most minimum viable product, if you like, that startups in the business world need to focus on. And so perhaps in that sense, we can also take a longer term view and have an idea about how things might develop and set the targets for the interim things that can be done in the meantime. I work mainly in, I need slides going here. I work mainly in BIM and in lean construction. And in monitoring technologies are becoming far more available now. We see many startups using those technologies in order to advance us. We also live in an era where artificial intelligence is becoming far more available in various modes and aspects. And I would add to that we see all the technology and processes around digital twins. And when we look at that picture of those 5 areas of innovation in our world, in our environment, then the question becomes, okay, how do we bring all this together to change the way that buildings are built, to change the way that we actually operate construction? And I want to begin with a slide or two from the Center for Digital Build Britain. I had the privilege to spend a year there recently on a sabbatical. And I think perhaps one of the main messages that we want to keep in the back of our minds is that digital twins are great for operating individual assets, but they really do need, and certainly in terms of infrastructure and more complex systems, to become integrated in other systems. And so we can talk about systems of systems and system of systems of systems of digital twins. And if you take a really long view, then you can also think about this idea of Digital Build Britain. And I'm sure that Alexandra gave a good explanation of all of this last week. But our focus in my work is very much on this build phase and the way in which that build phase fits into the fabric, if you like, of a city and of a local industrial sector of construction. So at the most basic level, I want to touch on the different information aspects that we have to consider when we're building digital twins for construction. And I'll tell you where I'm going with this is to be able to talk about a new concept that we might call digital twin construction, not as an application of digital twins to construction, but rather as a new mode, a new contracting perspective on construction. So let's start at the beginning and say, the first thing, of course, is we separate the physical from the virtual or from the digital. And in a fundamental way, what we're trying to do with this, which is very similar to what we saw in the previous two presentations, is to have our construction monitor that construction site, generate our digital twin, and maintain it over time to reflect the status of the project at any given time, and then to continually operate it. And we're not operating the bridge or the building or the energy systems, we're actually operating the construction process. And so if we just focus for a moment on the different technologies, you can see that there's a very wide range. And many of the startup companies individually focus on any particular one. So we have companies using 360-degree images, and we have companies using barcodes and RFID and laser scanning and all things. But clearly we can see that we need to begin integrating those. And so there are these acquisition of laser scanned point clouds. There are applications on mobile units for monitoring what's going on site. There are the ability to photograph things, to use sensors, but also to bring information back to the site. Now, if we want to merge information, raw data, if you like, from all of these different sources, of course, we need to register and compress and store that raw data feed. But really what we're interested in doing is interpreting and merging everything that we're sensing out in the field, on the construction site, and in the supply chains in a way that allows us to interpret and merge activities, labor paths, material flows, equipment paths, and so on, to build a project status model. And I want to emphasize that as we go up the scale here from data to information, we're putting BIM on the side. BIM is a source of information for this process, but we very much see the project status model as standing separate from the BIM model. The next thing that we recognize, of course, is that we're dealing with both product and process. And so in that sense, if we have models of our product, the product we design, our design intent, which is our building models, we also have models of our process, our construction path, which is really an integration of schedules, of material supplies, of resource planning, and really we can call that virtual design and construction, the VDC acronym that we have down there. And just as a quick example of the way that people are acquiring things, an acquisition from a 360-degree camera here on the left, and the mapping of that to the BIM model. And what I want to emphasize here is that we're seeing here on the left the status, and we're seeing on the right the intent, and clearly they're different. They're different in nature, and they're different in content, and they're different in syntax. The third part of this that comes into this is this question of the process itself and the nature of the process. And one of the changes that the construction industry is dealing with is the introduction of lean construction, and in particular, project control processes that conform to this plan, do, check, act cycle. So what we really want to do is be able to build in the plan, do, check, act process into the digital twin construction mode. And of course, these things are run iteratively in different cycles. So you begin, you monitor, you interpret, you understand, you make decisions, you optimize, and then you act, and then you repeat in whatever your planning and control cycle may be. So when we come to address this idea of digital twin construction, we're talking about different information dimensions, the virtual versus the physical, the intent of what we want to do versus the status, what we already have done, the product versus the process. And in all of that, we're trying to build from data to information to knowledge in these repeating cycles. So in terms of the process, we have an information life cycle. We have the actual control of the activities on construction sites that we're using a plan to check act cycle. And really, if we translate that plan to check act, what we're talking about is model, build, monitor, interpret, and then evaluate and improve. If I look very quickly at the information side of things, we see that there are three axes of information: the process and the product. So we have the construction process, the physical construction process, and the building itself under construction. The virtual reflections of those two. So we really have two digital twins: the project status information as built, reflecting the product, and the project status information as performed, telling us what was done, what were the patterns of behavior. And then on the flip side of the status and the intent, or if you like, the past and the future, we have the project intent information, both as designed and as planned. And we're currently in the throes of a big major European Union-funded research project called BIM to Twin, where we're trying to throw all those ideas together. We are 17 different partners, but at the core of that collaboration to try and develop this digital twin construction model over the 4 years that we've been given sits this model, if you like. And so we see here, of course, on the right-hand side, the physical twin of our buildings, on the left-hand side, our digital twin. But if I interpret this in terms of that cycle, we have here the design product, the planning, and the process, which is stored in the BIM models here as the PII. That, together with the simulation and analysis, drives the construction itself. So we control the construction in the field and in the supply chain. We then monitor it using all those technologies that we spoke about before. We gather raw monitored data. We interpret that data to create the project status information, as built product and as performed process. Of course, we rely on that from information that we intended, and we then evaluate conformance by comparing the intent to the status. We can produce knowledge about the product and the process. On the basis of that knowledge, we can predict future performance through simulation analysis and use both of those to drive changes in the design or in the planning, which then again feed back into building and create the loop. So what we're really considering here is a new kind of construction. Instead of digital twins for construction, we're really talking about digital twin construction. And that raises questions about the business case, of course. For example, we can ask questions: how will monitoring be provided? Well, it's very unlikely that the construction companies will do this themselves. So we expect, as we already see in the startup world, monitoring service companies providing outsourced solutions that include the monitoring hardware and software. Now that, of course, requires sophisticated data processing and the AI and so on, which puts it in the field of startup companies and others, technologies that can focus on that. And then how will you provide the data analysis and the event processing? So we see that we can't expect construction companies themselves to provide all of these services. In fact, construction companies, general contractors, by habit and by practice to avoid risk, generally tend to outsource everything. And so why not this too? Then we ask the question, who will run the predictive analytics, the simulations, and make recommendations? Now, this is really expert knowledge in construction management. But it's not unreasonable to think that that kind of knowledge will start to be embedded in software as well, and that those same service provider companies, when they reach their more complex phases, as Ken pointed out, will begin not only hosting the information, but also the knowledge about a project, and provide the AI for data mining, parametric design, and process optimization. And what that suggests is that we can imagine sort of digital twin construction control rooms, be they physical or virtual. And this provides a business opportunity for companies to provide a full construction and product management service that can manage portfolios of projects from remote centralized control rooms. And of course, now instead of having to be on site, I can be in this remote control room. And because I have a digital model for doing all this, I can have far fewer people. And that means that my service provider company can actually manage far more projects than a standard conventional construction management team might be able to do. And to give you the sense that this is not that far out into the future, we do already have examples of project control rooms, such as this one of Mace, using different BIM and VisiLean software to run their construction project. But these control rooms are still located on site, and they're used intensively for lean construction practices and for others. But there's no reason to think that in our digital world they could not move off-site or entirely into the virtual world and be done remotely. And so I guess when we're looking toward in terms of business opportunities and business models is that we might see an entirely new breed of digital twin construction companies whose operating system is quite different from that we see today, very heavily reliant on digitalization, but resting on all these platforms of BIM, lean construction principles, monitoring technologies and hardware, AI for interpretation, and the root concepts of digital twins. And I'm going to stop there, having run a little over time. And
very interesting. Thanks a lot, Rafael.
We open up for your questions.
Yeah. Time is flying, so I think we will invite all the 3 speakers back on stage. But before that, I will also like to say to the listeners today that take the opportunity and ask some questions in the chat, and we'll see if we can bring some of them on to the speakers here today also. Thanks a lot of information and to digest. Let's start in the value creation part of this. Where do you see the greatest business opportunities today? Where in the value chain, or which stakeholders? Is it even possible to say like that? Who would like to go first?
Yeah, I can give a quick
go first. Yeah.
I can give a quick answer. I really think having a visualization tool for the operations phase is something that we can deliver, and from a value point of view, that's something that in a short timeline can really deliver a lot of value now, and that's really what I'm most interested in, and out of the report, but that I've found as kind of a really valuable place to be operating at the moment.
Any comments?
Yeah, absolutely. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, loud and clear.
Yep.
Perfect. So I think it's never an either or, to be honest. And I definitely agree with Ken, just bringing that visualization piece to all these fragmented systems can definitely help a lot. But at the same time, working with, GCs, or Rafael said, general contractors in the US and also in Sweden, and talking to some of the global giants, I can also see, this terrifying piece of information that they're not thinking about technology or raising, the level of information that you're building new buildings with, right? So if we don't stop that as soon as humanly possible, then we're going to continue building buildings the way that we always have been doing. And I think that's, for me, it's just it's a sense of urgency to stop that. So all the buildings that are going to be built has to have more technology, raising the level of detail in the beginning, thinking with this digital twin construction, which I love, Rafael, as well. It's not, and it's more than BIM. That has to be, it's, cost, scheduling, it, everything that happens during a construction process that has the digital twin has to cater to that. So BIM is not synonymous with, digital twin. It's a very, very small but important subset of a digital twin in the construction phase. So I really think that we should, it's like, you're having a boat with full of holes, and now we're trying to steer that in the right direction, right? We need to plug the holes first, how, buildings are being built, and at the same time, work on all the different aspects of the entire real estate life cycle, which should be the purpose of digital twins for the holistic purpose of life cycle, to be honest. My short answer.
Yeah. I think that often when we discuss digital twin, we start in the construction phase. We start with building new things. Are there a business case also looking at the installed base? How to start in the other end and how to optimize things?
Rafael, do you want to go?
Yeah, well, my expertise is actually in the construction phase, so it's a challenging question in that sense. But I think that if we take a broader view, let's take the lean thinking view. And from that perspective, we know that in many, many industries and many operations, infrastructure systems, we know that there is a great deal of waste. And the waste is there because people don't have the right information at the right time, or the right materials, or the right whatever it is they may need to do. And whether that's for repairing a building, renovating a building, designing a building, building one, or operating all the transportation systems around the cities as well. And that waste accumulates or we can get rid of a lot of that waste when we put the right information in the hands of the right people at the right time. So sharing information becomes absolutely essential. But you can also leverage that information so that, and forgive me for a moment to divert from the question, but if you think of the construction phase itself, if we imagine a platform business of that kind, providing coordination among, for example, ready-mix concrete suppliers or suppliers of other construction materials, and if I'm now building many projects across a city, then there's no reason to think that I couldn't much more tightly control the delivery and the coordination of timing for trucks and other things to deliver to different construction sites. And in that way, reduce the loads on the city, reduce the loads on existing infrastructure, and contribute in that way. Not to mention, of course, earning a percentage off the top of all of that material that's flowing and so on. So the revenues may come from the business itself rather than from the information, but my ability to manage that information is what allows me to get that revenue. Not unlike Uber replacing taxi stands or controllers.
Yeah. And I absolutely love that, statement, buildings as material banks, and, enabling that, transparency between all the stakeholders that already either exist or will exist in this space. But I mean, to that point, Lena, as in, working with existing assets. And I think, I see digital twins as a concept that can be, applied to basically anything. That's why I'm in all, these different industries. And if you're looking at in a concrete example for an existing building, traditionally, when you want to do a retrofit something, you invite some people, they look at stuff, and they write that down. You have a risk budget of X amount of hundreds of thousands of dollars or Swedish krona, whatever that is, and then you have a couple of regional vendors that can cater to that. If you instead we go at it with a digital twin approach, you scan the whole thing, you take that into a point cloud, maybe you do some other things, and then you can invite to innovate. So you get people in that you can bid on the process with a minimal risk budget. You have the digital twin as a collaboration tool, whether that is, like the ultimate digital twin data integration AI capabilities, absolutely not. But it's definitely that visual starting point that Ken was also talking about, that you get where the stakeholders can collaborate, you feed that with more and more information, and then you can go from there. Because the more modern, the ultimate digital twin tools, they have the ability to ingest BIM, CAD, IoT, all these kind of things to this digital twin. And I know that for sure because this is the area that I'm working with, today, right? So I think but having that starting point is whether that is in, in the beginning of the construction phase, in the middle, at the end, whenever that is. I mean, I'm involved in decommissioning for nuclear power plants. That is a digital twin play. It doesn't matter. Digital twins is a concept that should be applied to any part of the real estate life cycle, any life cycle, and go from there into the future.
Yeah, some body language from Ken.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we've gone from saying digital twins aren't just BIM to saying a moment ago, if there is an existing asset, all we need to do is scan it, and then we have a digital twin and people can use it. The problem with existing buildings, and the vast majority of our building stock at 2030 are all built, like 95% of them. And I showed that hospital in Norway that we've built, is that the precursors or the mindset of what is a minimum viable product of a digital twin mean that no one can get started because no one has that budget. So where is the starting point for an existing building's digital twin? And that's what I'm trying to advocate with our really simple digital twins, where we can create 10 or 20,000 meters squared in a day with our outsourcing. And we kind of own the engine, and it's the logics and libraries are ours. My whole problem kind of is summarized there. That okay, let's make a digital twin of this building. What's in a digital twin? This, and this. Oh no, I can't afford it anymore. And it's just this kind of chicken and egg where we stop every time. And that's why we're advocating for simple for the moment.
And actually, that was my next question. That is, what do you think is the bottleneck, or what is holding us back? Is that we are having these visions of very complex twins, do you say? Or what is the bottleneck?
I think
I can say one
what
sentence.
Ken, yeah, I was first. So
Yeah.
I think like it's exactly what Ken was saying. Focusing on the cost. It costs too much. It costs whatever. How long is a rope? What is the value? What is the business hit that you want to solve? If you want to do this, within that will save you. It's again like not establishing the business case. Everything is expensive, right? If you have no idea what you can gain out of it. I think that's and I think these questions, I think like simple digital twins, absolutely. Go all for it if that can scale into the future. The biggest problem with digital twins today is that they stop at some point. Data integration, if you don't think about that from the beginning, smart cities, construction, real estate, then it can only scale that far, and then you're stuck with a 1,000 cuts problem. So even though I agree to some extent with Ken, there's also like a highway to the danger zone if you do these kind of things as well in the long run. And I'm all for the long run. We're here, we have to do this. We've got climate crisis on our hands, so we better make this right, I think.
Yeah, and my quick answer is if you take a new building and it has a building information model and all the systems are integrated with it and it has open data or something, and that's your dream of a digital twin, my problem is that if we can't afford that or if the technology isn't ready, we can't decide which 25 or which 50 or which 75% to leave for another day and where to start. So we really can't see those iteration points. And that's why we kind of go, oh, which bits will we leave out today? Oh, we can't decide, so let's do everything. And it's that repeating process that I think is the block, that we can't see the version 1, version 2, version 3 iterations.
But I think that,
Actually,
Lena, I'll just to add that I'm not sure that the question doesn't hide a fallacy, perhaps, because I don't believe that we are stopped or blocked. I mean, from my perspective, in digital twins, whether it be for cities, for buildings, or for construction, I feel that we're moving ahead very quickly. And the pace of change is very rapid. And I don't think that there's any particular thing holding back. What I think we're hearing from Nicholas and from Ken in the discussion is that at the same time, we need small, measured, successful steps, and those are happening. We see many, many startup companies who are succeeding in the construction space for sure, and clearly that the kind of thing that empathic building is doing is the same example. But we also see efforts at standardization of information at the international level, which will allow interaction between digital twins in the future. No doubt that some of the companies and initiatives that we have today will fail and they'll be replaced, but I think that's a natural thing. And as long as we have the right long-term view and we understand the principles behind it, which fortunately we have academics and researchers who can do in the background without having to justify it economically day to day. It's only in the long term, but day to day, no. Then we have the opportunity to make progress.
I'm sorry for interrupting, but I really would like to bring in some questions also from the audience. I think we had one question from Andrea.
I think like some of the questions were answered in the chat, and I think like Bernd is saying here, start with Axel, but maybe we can, okay, fair enough.
Yeah, here it is.
Let's start with this one.
A question from Ken. Are the open standards and open data prerequisites for development of digital twins in the way that you described in your presentation?
Yeah, so I spent a lot of my history kind of working on data and trying to find insights rather than just nice to have. Our approach, our really, really minimum viable product approach, is just a visualization layer. So we're not integrating anything in a central point or a black box. We're integrating with separate systems and we're visualizing them for analytics and to print reports. So we're just using our API logics and the other points, be it a Schneider BMS system or an access control system, their APIs, and we're not actually using any standards at this point. And I think they're a really relevant element for people to be working on, but we've kind of bypassed them for the moment to just have this visualization and reporting engine. We're not doing analytics at our end.
And speaking about data, I think that the value of digital twins lies a lot in the information and the data and the insights, of course, that we can get from them. I see different movements in society right now. On one hand, we are going towards more open data and sharing data in different ways. But on the other hand, there is also a growing concern for information security and privacy and so on. What do you see in front of you in this development, and how will that kind of influence the adoption of digital twins?
I can answer quickly, hopefully, but I think like definitely the security aspects, they're more, known right now. And I think like when we're starting to connect buildings and all these kind of things, we realize, they're super open, super easy to attack, super easy to hack them. And, the attack surfaces are, immense. And especially if you're getting these connected through IoT. But I think like to Raphael's point, what I see is happening was a super interesting discussion yesterday from a smart city perspective. And that also goes to what Raphael said, that it's not necessarily, the city or the owners or whatever. It could be some player that comes in, they provide, edge intelligence, they provide actually the infrastructure. And, we see that in the US right now, we know in Austin, Texas. So this would be like the cool, sexy stuff in terms of revenue models, business models, where they create an entirely new asset class. So before you had data centers, now they're coming up, these data centers for cities where they jam all the technology inside. And that in itself provides a better way for technology companies to provide services to the city, for the city to consume all these kind of things and realize the premise and the promise of 5G, digital twins, IoT, analytics, autonomous vehicles, but without the caveat, because if this would be the city that owns this technology, with the open transparency stuff that you have in Sweden, they would be forced to share a lot of that information, which is exactly the opposite, right? But if someone comes in as a supplier of, smart city intelligence, whether that is construction and flow of mobility, once you get into that city, it's a totally different story. There we, 5G network slicing, you can, distribute these kind of things, and, someone can own parts of this, and you'd have the orchestration act provided by a smart city supplier. And I think that's exactly I know that's exactly what is happening, what will happen, because I think that's a phenomenal solution and a great business model and a revenue model, actually, having the tech companies coming in, paying for this for future long-term capabilities that will benefit both the society, the inhabitants, as well as technology companies as a hotbed of innovation, to cater around. As a point here.
Thank you. And I think we will take our time with one more question from the audience before we wrap up here today. And that is from Axel. Do you think that the role of the traditional actors are going to change in a digital twin business future? For example, that architects become data authors, designing projects' data architecture.
And clearly roles will change, and some roles will be automated. It happens in every industry, and we see it happening. But I think that probably if the question relates to architects per se and architects of buildings, then I would imagine that their role is going to become a lot more focused on the generation of ideas, the generation of design, rather than on the management of information and on the management of teams, because that will be taken away from them. And perhaps their role may be more focused, but there will be less work overall for architects, in much the way that there is already less work for structural engineers, where many of the more detailed design aspects are being automated. Structural steel connections can now be automated and designed by machine learning algorithms that use case-based reasoning. We see that happening in companies like Sweco in Sweden and around Europe. We see it in reinforced concrete engineering design, where the detailing of the reinforcement can be increasingly automated. And that's maybe 40, 50% of the time of structural engineers. And there's no reason to think that architects would be any different. So the more detailed sides of detailing glazing or window or flooring or whatever, and producing documents will probably recede. Whether they move to apply their talents in other areas, well, that remains to be seen. And I don't think that data architecture or information architecture is similar in any real way to building architecture.
So I think we are already over time. I will wrap up with one final question, and then we will end for today. And that is actually, is that okay, Bernd? Or
go ahead.
Yes, great. That is actually, we have been a lot in the private sector, and I think if we move into the more public side of this, the municipalities, do you already see business models within that sector for municipalities?
Yeah, I see one really interesting case in Finland where a school is closed down because of kind of air quality problems. And it's in the city of Espoo, and they've kind of dropped the school into the neighboring buildings. And they're now talking about school as a service, that a school is a collection of educational services that can be theoretically taught anywhere, not in a building. So it's about kind of giving kids access to, you know, the sports hall or the university or a kitchen or something somewhere. And that's a really interesting kind of development, that we have the building stock that we have, and we have different access, and then we use kind of spaces on demand. And definitely some kind of smart building technology and kind of access and user interface and kind of digital twins. I think that Espoo case, I think they're calling the whole concept city as a service, is a really interesting development of how municipalities are being really lean with their spaces and then using technology to enable it.
And with that, you got the final word, Ken. So thanks a lot for participating today and for really interesting presentations. I would like to see this as a start of a dialogue and a really interesting topic that will continue, at least within the Digital Twin City Center in Sweden. So with that, over to you, Bent.
Thank you. Thank you, all speakers. Thank you, Lena, for moderating this session. We went a little over time. I hope that's all right with the audience. Many interesting questions we couldn't address. We will do that in the future. I have just last point of order for today. Just want to point out next session, next Wednesday, will be on organizational and legal challenges. It's also going to be a really interesting question. Sarah Rock, Ronald van der Hayden, and Jan Sau will join us there. I hope to see you all back then, and have a good afternoon. Bye-bye.